So tell me about your background, your work as a personal trainer, and the path that led you to working with people diagnosed with Parkinson's.
Yeah, totally. So I actually I became a personal trainer when I was 18, which is when you're legally allowed to. Um, Before then, not allowed. And so I was really interested in physical fitness, and so I actually started before that, even taking classes at a community college here in New Jersey, Mercer County Community College, kind of looking at health and exercise science. And then after that, getting my certification here through the WITS program, also at Mercer County Community College. It was like really cool. It was this hands-on program in person. The great instructor, and I really loved it. And and I was already planning on kind of thinking about going to school in that regard, and that certification in those early classes solidified that in my mind. Um,
Nice.
so yeah, so I took that, and I started training some friends around here in Hopewell right away, out of a little garage gym. Definitely didn't have insurance at the time. 18-year-old
We all start
Nathaniel was
somewhere, right?
making
Yeah.
it happen.
Yeah.
um, Anyway, and from there, I ended up going to Colorado State University and studied health and exercise science there for 4 years. Loved the program, and at the end of that program, they have you go out on an internship for all of the last semester. So you don't take any classes; you're just doing an internship. And I ended up at the YMCA in Northern Colorado. Um, and working with the health and exercise science, health and exercise department there. Um, and so I loved the community that they had. I loved the populations that they were helping. Um, and so out of graduating out of college, I got hired to be the fitness director at the Boulder YMCA.
Nice.
So I started there, and I quickly, well, it took me about a year and a half, but I guess somewhat quickly, realized that I really just wanted to be working with people in classes and training, and the administration stuff wasn't as much what I was interested in.
Yeah.
So yeah, and so because I was still doing some training and I was teaching a decent amount of classes while also having the administrative role, and I was like, all my passions in these classes right now. And so I transitioned out of the administrative role and into just teaching and training. Um, Technically full time, or excuse me, technically part time, but just under the hours. I was basically full time teaching and training at the Boulder YMCA in Colorado, and the populations, it just happens, the population that frequent this YMCA, they're all a little bit different, but I would say probably the demographic was mostly between the ages of 50 and 80, right?
Wow. Okay.
Especially in the exercise classes. And so I was teaching about 10 classes a week there, of varying types. My real passion, kind of going into this, was actually balance training. Um,
Oh, nice.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and so I had done a lot of certifications with balance, and worked a one-on-one a lot with people with balance, and I taught a balance class twice a week. We took over the basketball gym for an hour. It was great. We lined the walls with people, so they had something to hold on to, and really just got into it. And Previously, the YMCA um, had done some exercise programs for people with Parkinson's disease.
Okay.
And they hadn't run those programs at the Boulder Y in a little while. They are running some pedaling for Parkinson's programs at some of their other YMCA's, which is just some stationary bike programs that they kind of look at heart rate and how that um, affects symptoms, especially on the neurological level rather than the physical level. Um, and so they were running those programs. So I went to those. I met a lot of people. I talked with some other instructors in the area, because we really wanted to relaunch this program at the Boulder Y. And so I just kind of figured it out, talking to all these people, using online resources, and kind of my background with my degree and my background in balance training. Um, and started a group class once a week at the Boulder Y, um, for people with Parkinson's and MS as well. And it was just such an incredible community, and so that's kind of what led me into working with this group. And then from that group class, they're like, "Oh, so you work at the Y? Do you do other things?" I was like, "Oh, I teach these other classes, and I'm a trainer." And so I ended up working with some of these folks one on one as well after that. And yeah, so I just kind of, it wasn't on purpose, but I'm so glad that that's where I ended up. Yeah.
Nice, nice. It just seems very organic, like
Yes.
it's like when you were just
So
in the right
organic.
place at the
Yeah.
right time. And, it
Mhm.
just seemed like you were just so interested in that community. And, balance
Yeah.
training especially is big
A
for the
big deal.
Parkinson's
Yeah. It's
community.
a big
Yeah.
deal.
Well, that's
Definitely.
awesome that you were there and offering your expertise to everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. And it
Yeah.
was great. And it was also that I could, like they can come take these other classes that I taught too. So they would come to my balance classes, and I had I actually taught classes in that they have a warm water therapy pool there as well. So I was teaching classes in
Oh,
the pool.
nice.
And so there are all these different outlets where I was like, hey, like we can tap into all these different things. It's not like necessarily these classes aren't uh, designed specifically for people with Parkinson's disease, but there's so much overlap in so many different ways that they got a lot of benefits out of them. Yeah.
Very nice. Very nice. So I kind of want to talk about the flip side of this. Is people are
Yeah.
like a lot more sedentary these days than they should be.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about the effects of decreased exercise for people with PD?
Yeah, totally. So I think that a lot of kind of what ends up happening with more sedentary behaviors is you just, we're kind of taking a look at all these uh, symptoms that happen as a result of Parkinson's disease, and they just kind of they kind of take off a lot faster when we're not physically
Mm,
active.
progresses faster.
It
Yeah.
progresses a lot faster. It's going to start affecting quality of life a lot sooner, um, and it progresses both in the sense of your dopamine production is going to drop off a lot faster, and then that also is going to manifest in your gait changing, in having more rigidity in your posture, in the slowness of movement, and all those other different symptoms. And so they've studied exercise as it relates to all these individual things, all of these things, and it improves all of them, and it might be a different type of exercise that helps with those different areas. But I think when you have a program that's addressing all of those, right, it's really a systemic thing, right? And
That's true.
when we're sedentary, all those things get worse a lot faster. Yeah.
Yep. You don't use it, you lose it. That's so
Yep.
true.
Don't use it, you
Yeah.
lose it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So talking back to the people that may not be in an exercise program right now or may not be
Yeah.
moving regularly, how can someone like that start exercising on a regular basis? I mean, you don't want to just go from 0 to 100.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how would you like encourage someone to like just get started and then
Totally.
like start exercising on a more consistent basis?
Yeah. Well, I think that this kind of relates to everybody in a way. It's not just people with Parkinson's disease. That everybody kind of falls into that category of how do I get into this habit, and how do I keep it in a way. And it's, I think a lot of it, what it's about is finding the thing that you enjoy, not forcing
Mm,
yourself to find something that's a chore.
yeah.
And so maybe that's dance, maybe that's going for a walk, and starting off the habit in a way that makes you feel excited and happy about it. I think is the first most important thing. If your thing isn't going to the gym and lifting weights and balancing on one leg and doing all these other like specific things that everyone's like, oh, this is the best program, you have to do this. No, I think it's what what's sustainable, and a lot of times that's what you're going to find more enjoyment in. And I think the other really big thing about adherence to exercise is the social aspect of it. um,
Great.
and whether that's going to a class where there's a group of people, or maybe that's having some family members who are going to come with you to exercise. I remember I had one client, And her daughter came with her to every single workout that I went through with her. She came there and she was there to support her that whole time. And so
Right.
finding those support networks socially, I think, is a really big deal. And that social aspect is just really great for our mental health too, which is a big deal. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I just know, from teaching dance or PD, like
Yeah.
the social aspect is like the reason people keep
The
coming
reason.
back
Yeah.
usually.
It's a huge
Yeah.
part,
It's really
and
big.
finding people that can relate to, kind of what your experience is a really big deal too.
Yeah. And they kind of end up holding each other accountable as well. Like, oh, hey, you weren't in class last week. What's going
Maybe
on?
email each other,
Yeah.
like, like, "Oh, I haven't seen Susan this week," They're like, "Oh, well, she's off and, on vacation somewhere." Like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah. Yeah.
We check
Yeah.
in
But
with each other, so yeah.
you create that community. You care about each other and you want each other to
Totally.
succeed.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
yeah.
it's a big part of it. Awesome. So, my next question for you is: are there certain types of exercise that people with Parkinson's should partake in? Now, mind you, I know everybody doesn't have the same symptoms that manifest in the same ways. So, it's
Yeah.
really hard to give like a blanket
Yeah,
answer for this.
it is.
But are there certain exercises that you would kind of recommend? And conversely, are there some exercises that people with Parkinson's should maybe consider avoiding?
Yeah. Well, I think, to some extent, like you're saying, right, everyone's symptoms are going to be a little bit different, and having exercise that specifically is working on those symptoms, I think, is a big deal. That whole idea of specificity with training as it relates to athletes also relates to this. If you want to get really good at your sport, you're going to do things that relate to that sport. If you want to help prevent these type of symptoms, we need to, right, let's say, for example, if we're taking a look at gait, right, you know doing a bunch of bench press isn't necessarily going to help you at all with your gait, right? And so it's finding the thing that you feel that might need to be improved or prevented the most, and using that exercise as the target for that. Now, that being said, I think that, taking a look at things like, there are, looking at things like rigidity, right? Thinking about as mobility relates. I think mobility is really important to have as an exercise form, especially really big movements, right?
Yes,
Having
amplify it.
mobility, having big movements, working on balance is really important as well. There's a whole laundry list of things here, but and I would also say that having some cardiovascular training is really important. Having the heart rate elevate has been shown in some research studies to really help with that kind of neural protection, that neuroplasticity side that exercise has to offer. So I think there's something really big there. But yeah, so I guess if I had to pick a couple modalities, I would say have some balance training, have some mobility training, and have some cardiovascular training. And going for a walk could get all of those, to some extent, if depending on
That's
how,
true.
right, really exaggerate your arm swings, take big steps, take a pause on one foot, walk faster up a hill, that kind of things. You could incorporate all those things just into a walk. And so finding how you can take those things and then apply them in a realistic way is really important, I think.
Sure. Yeah, and combining music with that too. That
Yeah,
music can
yeah,
influence the gait, can influence like
totally.
that cardiovascular effort. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
Awesome. So can you describe like a positive experience that you had with a client of yours with Parkinson's
yeah,
and the steps that they kind of took to achieve the successful outcomes that came from
yeah,
that?
totally. Um, so I remember one of my clients who I met through our group exercise class. He started coming to the class um, that was more targeted for people with Parkinson's. He started coming to that class, and I distinctly remember, he was using a walking stick at this point, or to find that support. And, his gait was a lot slower. He was a little unsure of himself, and so he started coming to that class, and then he started also coming to the balance classes that I was leading. And then he was like, "This is great. I'm gonna get some one-on-one." So I started working with him one-on-one as well, more in the gym setting, because we're not getting as much of that strength aspect of things in those classes, and we can't progress balance training at a higher intensity for safety reasons in those classes. And
That's
so we
true.
can do that on a one-on-one because I can give them all that support. And I remember one day he came into class and he didn't have his cane at all, and he was walking, he was taking these big steps, and
Okay.
he just came in with this confidence, Um,
I like
and
it.
so it was not only that, hey, his gait has improved, his balance has improved to the point where he didn't need that anymore, but it was also his mental attitude around it had changed, and he just had, yeah, I just will remember that day. Yeah. And so the things that we were doing, I think that kind of primarily really helped him with that were those specific trainings around gait and balance, and
Mm.
practicing, you know, walking and moving sideways and backwards and taking big steps forwards, and those types of things. I think that's where the biggest improvements came from. I'm not saying, don't strength train, that's a lot of what I train with people who are don't have Parkinson's. That's a lot of what I do. But I think those are more potent. Yeah, in this
Very
context.
nice. Very nice. And that actually leads into my final question for you perfectly. Because it's like if there's any better advertisement for personal training,
Yeah.
it's the fact that you can get more specific and you can give them like greater challenges that,
Mm.
and you can give them more support with those challenges as well, as opposed
Yeah.
to in a group setting.
Yeah.
So yeah, just talk a little bit more about having, personal training and how that can really benefit people with PD on their wellness journey.
Totally. Um, I think that it's a companion is the first thing that I'll say. I think it's a companion. I
Mm.
don't think it's the only thing. Um, and because I really do think that social component of classes is really huge. And I think that there are other daily lifestyle habits that you can maintain without a trainer as well. But with that being said, I think that the specificity of someone's symptoms can really be addressed a lot more on that one-on-one setting. And you can push the envelope of the intensity a lot further in a really safe way when you have that one-on-one attention. Whether that's like they're really paying attention to, your heart rate, making sure you're not going too hard, whether that's they're really tracking your form on some exercises, whether that's, they're, pushing the envelope with balance and their eyes are closed and you're right there, to support, if anything, if they start to lose their balance, whereas that you wouldn't be able to do in that class setting or in that without a trainer setting. And so I think that it's a really potent tool when it comes to kind of getting almost to that next level of exercise.
Mm.
And yeah, and the other thing that I'll say when it comes to adherence is, when you have an appointment with somebody, right, you're going to go to that appointment, right?
Yep.
And most of the time, right? And having that accountability with a trainer is another big deal, to keep coming back to exercise, because in all these different studies and all these different research, right, the most important thing I think is having that consistency, right?
Absolutely.
Because exercising once a month is a lot different than exercising 5 times a week. And
Yeah.
so if that's kind of something that helps you, having that appointment with somebody, I think that's a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah. And I can just tell like your clients are in great hands with you. Like, thank you so much. Yeah. I just
Yeah.
appreciate hearing about all this. We got into like a little bit of it during moving
Yeah.
day, but I was like, I just want to
Yeah.
hear some more about what you do and how you do it. And,
Yeah.
I can just tell that you're just really passionate about what you do.
Yeah.
That just
Definitely.
rings through, and you're just going to help so
Thank you.
many more people, during the course of your career. So please let my listeners know where they can find you and where they can
Yeah.
sign up for your training.
Yeah, so my online presence is very small, I will say.
That's
But
okay.
the gym that I work out of is Hopewell Valley Fitness. It's in Pennington, New Jersey. And so that's where I train out of. And then just for getting in touch with me, I can actually shoot you over. I have a little promotional flyer.
Oh, sure.
Which
I'll
will be
post that.
helpful. But
Absolutely.
then just email and phone are the ways I'm hoping to get a website up there in the future, but but that's not, and I'm not on social media. That's just a personal
That's a
thing.
good thing.
Not that I have anything against it for other people, just not for me. And so, yeah, that's what I would say is I work out of that gym. We can, connect over email or phone, and I'll get you that flyer so people can learn a little bit more about me and not just, who is this guy?
Awesome.
But yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Nathaniel, and I
Yeah,
just
thank you for
appreciate
having
you
me.
sharing everything that you've done, and keep doing what you do. And making a difference in this community, and they need you.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
I'm just very proud of you, and just can't wait to see what you do next.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Take care.